Hey y'all, welcome back. I love to do videos like this and I hate to do videos like this, but I'm gonna ask you to do me a favor as we do this video. 4 keys to eBay success. I want you to put yours down there and we'll kind of look at yours. I'll go through mine, we'll compare them at the end and see what we come up with. Maybe we can help some folks out and maybe you can help me out if you don't like my list. Let's go take a look. Somebody just followed me in. You don't care about the list, do you? You just care about the treats. You know, this reminds me of something. If you allow me to go off on a tangent, let me look and see how much this sold for real quick before we even start. Reminds me of back when I'd teach AP World History. We had to give a summer assignment for the kids who were serious about taking AP classes, and so I reluctantly did it. I would have hated to do that if I was a kid, but I gave one, and my assignment was so much easier than every other AP teacher. They hated me for it. But the assignment was for the kids to make a list of the top 10 most important, for them, what they thought were the most important historical events of all time, and put them in order from 1 to 10 and be able to talk about it the first day of school. That was a really easy AP assignment. I also gave an optional reading assignment because I had to give something. But that reminds me of this a little bit. Everybody's going to have a little bit different perspective coming into this. I'm going to give my list in just a second, but it really told me a lot about those kids. I absolutely loved that first and second day of school because we would dig in and we'd talk about our own biases and all kinds of different stuff. And it was just awesome. And the kids were hooked at that point. Got them talking, I'd learn all kinds of stuff. This is a Polaroid camera. And I bought this just about a year ago. And I paid up for a little bit. I think I paid maybe $15. I guess it's not really paying up for this. But for a Polaroid, this was a pink one. I'm like, that's going to do well. It's got the case and it finally sold. It sold for $64.95 plus shipping. It was almost inevitable that the kids would come in and we'd make these lists. They'd make the lists and we'd write it on the board and we'd go through it all. And almost maybe 80% of the items that were on those 10 most important things that have ever happened in world history, almost all of them, 80% or so, were about U.S. history. And I'm just like, And they would see that all up on the board and they'd realize, yeah, this is probably not right. We're talking about the history of the world all over the world, and we're only looking at things that are important here in the United States. But those things are what they knew and they loved, and that has a little bit to do with what I want to talk about. It's on an N64 game, Castlevania. Right here, this one wasn't in the best of shape as far as color-wise, but it's not bad. Sold for right around $21, $20.80 plus shipping. I guess I've already gone down the tangent, so I've probably lost some people already, but I'll finish it up really quick and then we'll get to the top 4 most important things to me, I think, in having success on eBay. But for those kids, every year there would be maybe 1 or 2 or 3 kids who would have the same events that were on my list. So I would show them my list when they were done, and I didn't want them to think my list was correct. I just said, hey, I get veto power over 3. I get to keep 3 things on this list, but let's collectively turn our lists into one list for this class. And then we do that and we debate it and talk about it, and kids would start to see, hey, you know, maybe if I'm a Christian kid, maybe I have a bias towards putting Christian events on here versus this Muslim kid over here who would put, you know, the Hijra on there, the beginning of the spread of Islam, where a Christian kid might put the crucifixion or the Paul's missionary journeys or the crusade, you know, who knows? And we'd start to look at it that way, like, hey, wait a minute, maybe my worldview, maybe my lens that I look at history through is really affecting how I see history. And I said, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with your biases as long as you understand them and know them when you look at things. And that's kind of what I want to do here, is just, you know, have you make your list, if you're willing to, of course, if you make comments down below, and then listen to this video and see if it makes any difference to you. I'm going to read your comments and do the same as well. This is all about things and personal experiences that shape these kind of opinions, so nobody's necessarily right on any of it. My buddy bought this in Arizona while I was on a trip visiting with my brother, and Turner was with me. I think I paid up for this one too, maybe $15. It sold for $45 plus shipping. All right, I'll get back to the history for all 4 of you out there who can't wait to hear my top 3 historical events ever. But And that's not entirely true. Maybe I'll put that at the end of the video. Let me grab one more thing and I'll get to my 4 most important things for success on eBay. 2 of them might surprise you a bit. We'll see. Let's see. This should be kind of small electronics. I'm surprised at this one. This one's sold. It's an iPod. It's an iPod Shuffle. 4th generation, I think. $32.95 for that one, plus shipping. By the way, this all got prompted by a comment by Kyle Odin, I think is your name. So thank you for that. He said, my 4 keys to eBay success. This is where I got the idea for the video, obviously. Good products, good pictures, good description, good packaging. Okay. And so I thought to myself, you know, what would my list look like? It would be, you know, a little bit more existential, I suppose, than that. But I like those. Those are all, you know, well, I don't even know if I'd say they're all important. I'm not a big believer in descriptions, for instance. You'd be shocked at looking at how poor my descriptions are, or non-existent. And I know a lot of people, I'm going to take heat from that, but I guess we'll get to that in a minute. My number 1, I think, would be this. Have good items. And what I mean by good isn't necessarily, you know, clean or, you know, I mean, that's all obviously important, but items that have a proven track record of having sales. Items that don't have massive competition and few sales. Sell-through rate, obviously. Let's look at this Castlevania. At the time of this video being filmed here, there are 140 used Castlevania N64 games out there. 140 or 104? 140. There are 208 sold. That is a good item. That's a really good item, actually. And mine sold right about the average selling price of just, you know, around $20, you know, excluding the auction ones. The auctions are always going to go for less money. And I see a lot more auctions, by the way, and I think it's because people have got to sell things, and it really hurts the market. But, you know, people got to do what they got to do. $20.83. So the market on these is pretty close to that for this condition of a game, plus shipping, right around $20. Which, by the way, incidentally, well, I'm not going to get into that today. But I would say number 1 is to have items that sell. Now, I don't have all my items aren't high sell-through rate items, but, you know, let's face it, if you're going to sell stuff, you got to have stuff that sells. Priority number 1. I might add just a little addendum to that first one. Yes, you got to have good items that have a track record of selling, and you really got to buy them at a decent price, you know, to be successful. So, anyway, this is a Magnavox DVD VCR combo. I'm going to make sure I get the right one. I might have 2 of these. That one sold for $59.95. I bought it at a yard sale just about 10 days ago for $10. So sold pretty quick. 10 into 60 plus shipping. I'm making a little bit on that shipping as well. Kyle's number 2 is good pictures. I'm going to go a little bit bigger than that, and it's allowing me to cheat and throw a few kind of similar things in the same way. By the way, I'm not criticizing your list at all. I often say, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. I like to look at other people's opinions and let them inform my opinions. But for me, I would put, instead of pictures here, what did I call it? I called it presentation. So buy good items that have a track record of selling and, you know, pay a cheap price for them. That's the first step in the equation. And the second one for me is good presentation. You know, pictures is part of presentation, but so is title. So is description to some point of, you know, to some degree, even though I do very, very few descriptions. I'm not suggesting you do that. To me, speed is more important than the description. If an item needs a description that the pictures and the title don't take care of, and the item specifics as well, and I'm kind of lax on those. If it needs it, I'll put it in there, but time is very important to me. A lot of people disagree with that, including my buddies over there, Tim and Chernock. They're very, very meticulous with their listings, and I get that. There's a reason behind that as well, and I don't disagree with that. But for me, just the overall presentation, which includes good pictures, a decent title that's going to be searchable, and sprinkling in a little bit of the other stuff, and have a good presentation for your item. Good enough, anyways, is going to work. You know, I'm going to cheat a little bit more, and I'm going to add a little bit more to the presentation part of it. Your overall cost, especially your cost compared to the shipping cost, I think has to be palatable for some people. So, you know, your cost is part of that presentation, just like your title is, how much it is, and then having reasonable shipping or a total cost that is reasonable. And kind of corresponds as well. In other words, not having a $30 shipping price for a $10 item. That's the turn. They'd rather pay $40 total free shipping. But anyway, this is a Harley backpack, and I paid $20 for this one. I tried to pay $15, but I paid $20. I think that's what I paid for it at the flea market, and it sold for $99.95 and was only listed for about 10-15 days. Kyle's next one was description. We already talked about that. That was his number 3. And, you know, I'm not going to go into detail about why I don't do descriptions, but just like I said, time to me is more important than that piece of it. But at times, that piece I still do, and it still is important. I have sold another one of these wood wicks right here. I had this fear that I sent out too few the last time I did these. Meaning somebody bought 2 sets of 3 and I only sent out 1. I've got to double check that. I went to bed that night and I'm like, wait a minute, was that right? Anyway, 3 of these are going out for $26.90. Free shipping. So my number 3, after, you know, good items at good prices, having a good presentation of those items, including all those things, my number 3, as far as keys to success, is just pure discipline. How much discipline do you have to do the things, not just to do them right, but to do them right and to do them again and to do them again and to do them again and to be consistent with it. So discipline is, man, I might even put it, it's not more important because you can't sell anything unless it's good. It's just, you know, which one came first, the chicken or the egg, right? But if you buy great items and you don't have the discipline to list those items and to do it again and to sell it and to do it again, you know, it's repetition. You're not going to succeed. So maybe in some ways that has to be at the top. So persistence and discipline and consistency, all those things are very, very important and should be up on anybody's list, I would think. Sold some more jeans, and I had never heard of these jeans. PRPS. I mean, what in the world? It's got a kid, like a handicapped angel kid right here with a crutch. PRPS. I sold for $40 plus shipping. I'll take it. Hey, I'd also include maybe the discipline in buying. Not buying too much, not paying too much, not overloading yourself with so much that you can't persistently and consistently and in a disciplined way process the stuff. And this one's going to get me to my number 4 here in just a second, but I'll take just a second first before I get there. I'll try to remember this one. This is something that I love to pick up. They're not worth a ton, but if I can get them for a couple of bucks, I probably am not going to even pay $5 for this one unless it was cleaned already and had no issues. Sometimes these are dirty and you don't want to do it. But it's a touch tone vintage phone, not in a desirable color. And so they don't go for much. But if I can get it for a couple bucks, $18.95 plus shipping without having to do any work to it other than maybe wiping it down, to me that's worth it. Barely, but it is. And that's going to get me to my number 4 here in a second, but I want to do 2 things. I want to look at my top 3 grand really quick and list them down, and I'm going to take a minute while you're listening to this to go look at your comments and start reading yours. I'm really excited about going through and looking at the different ways that people see things, as opposed to, you know, who's type A and, you know, this kind of stuff versus who's thinking more philosophically about it. I always find that stuff interesting. With my kids in my classroom, it was so telling. Well, all kinds of things were telling. One was, you know, some kids would have the identical same list, and I'm like, they must be buddies, and they must be willing to cheat. And we'd have those discussions too, but, you know, it would get interesting when we'd get into all those touchy situations, and, you know, because kids inevitably would put the religious things on there, and then they would start to debate and whatever, and it would really open up the situation and say, hey, you know, what is the most important to me? Or what do I think the most important is? That's very, very different questions. You know, because something that happened, you know, 5,000 years ago in India might not be important to you, but can you find and see how that might be important for the rest of history and the rest of humanity, or the billion people who live in South Asia or whatever? And we'd start talking about bigger issues. And I'd love that part of it because I love philosophy. Now I've yapped for too long. These are going out, 2 different people, $9.95 plus shipping. I totally take that back. That's $9.95 free shipping, which some people might even put free shipping in here. Some people might put promoted listings in here. They might put all kinds of different things. It'll be interesting. That's why I kept the number at 4, because it really makes you think about it. You know, if it's 10, it's like, yeah, you can get all the important things in here. But those are going out for $9.95 free shipping. I don't do a ton free shipping. I think the only 2 that are free shipping in here a lot of times are the multi-quantity type items, and this would be those, but the rest of them have shipping on it, and most of my items do. Man, it's a beautiful day. We're gonna have to delay my number 4 here on the list just a second, but this one sold and we haven't even got it inside. So I'm gonna grab this one, and we have some breaking news for another sale that just came in, and then I'll give you my number 4. See if I can find this right one. It was a train set. We just listed this. Looking for an Amtrak one. And of course, it's not going to be the easy one to find. Just a minute. I see another one down there, I think. There, I bet we're looking. No, there's 2 of them. Well, I'm gonna have to turn the camera off and find it. I found it. I suppose I should just bring this whole bin in, but I'm getting lazy here. I picked up a whole box of trains, like 20 some trains the other day. I paid $50 and had some tracks as well. And that one sold for $21.95, so we're already making a good chunk of our money back on one, and we have tons to go. All right, here's the breaking news. Nice big sale. This one has a little discoloration where there's a little red that's bled into it. I think you can see that. But otherwise, a great jacket. I paid under $10 a piece for a ton of jackets last fall, end of last summer. And this one just sold for $114.95, despite that issue, plus shipping. All right, so number 1, good items and all that entails, presentation and all that entails, and discipline. Number 3, my number 4 most significant thing, maybe a little odd for some folks, and that's being able to do it in a way that you really love. I think this is way more important than people think. For some people, maybe not for everybody, but it is for me, because it's what keeps me going. I had somebody the other day say, hey, you know, maybe you should learn how to do grading of records and learn how to, you know, do cameras better and learn how to clean shoes and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't want to. I don't want to because I don't like it. And if I don't like to do what I'm doing, it's not as easy to have the discipline to do it. That's not to say that stuff's not important. And if you depend on the money, of course, you should be doing those things. And I do learn more things. And I even know a little bit more about records than I used to. I know a little bit more about comics than I used to. I still don't want to do cameras, but there's too much money in it to pass it up. I don't want to do shoes. I don't want to clean shoes. So being able to do it your way that makes you happy and you're comfortable with is a big, big part of this. In other words, I don't think it's really important that people go out there and listen to the gurus about everything. You've got to find a way that makes you smile to do it, because you're going to keep doing it that way. Sell what you want to sell. Like, for instance, know yourself, right? Socrates used to say, the unexamined life is not worth living. I know I hate cleaning shoes. So it's like pulling teeth to get me to buy a pair of shoes when I'm out there on the garage sale trail that I know I should buy, because I know I don't want to clean them. If I find a nice new one or something like that, that's a different story. Maybe you're somebody who doesn't, you stress out a lot and you're worried a lot. Well, maybe you probably shouldn't be buying, 4-foot swung vases and waiting and praying that they get there in the mail without being broke. Maybe you hate shipping. Maybe you shouldn't buy DVD, VCR combos. Maybe you shouldn't buy rainbow vacuum cleaners and part them out if you hate to ship. I mean, listen, if you hate shipping VCRs, you're likely not to want to list them. And if you're not willing to list them, this is a $34.95 VCR. It is really low end, not great, but I don't mind shipping them. I like testing them. I enjoy it. So you pay a couple bucks or $5 and turn it into 35. It's not worth it for some folks because they don't like to ship them. So don't buy them. No matter how many VCRs you see people buy, just don't buy them. I can't tell you how many people I've seen that see somebody else doing something one way, and then they get excited about it and they buy it, and they find out they hate it, and they end up getting rid of all this stuff and actually losing money on it. So I think that is really key to the discipline part. If you don't like doing something, it's certainly harder to motivate yourself to have that discipline to do it. This is one of the cheaper jerseys I've sold. Bears Bennett jersey, $18 plus shipping. Paid $10, so not too good on that one. Sold a pair of boots. Did not do as well on these as I was hoping to. I think 36 and change for these Tony Llama boots. And I could have, there you go, there's my discipline, right? But I didn't go through and make them all fancy and nice. And I know that about myself, right? Chernock would have taken these, my buddy Chernock. I talk about him all the time. He does shoes and he does boots and clothes and stuff. And he would have made them things look just beautiful and probably got 80 bucks for them, but at least they're gone and I made a little bit. So there you go. Know yourself, right? I know I don't particularly like dealing with cameras and binoculars and stuff. I'm still willing to, and I pick it up when it's free or cheap. That's what I did with these binoculars. They had a few issues, so we only sold them for $15.19. But I bought them cheap enough that I knew I could sell them without putting a ton of work into them. I know some folks out there that just hate listing clothing. I've seen Dave, 88 Chef, he'll pass up on just incredible clothes and hats and stuff because he knows he won't list it. So at least he has the discipline to know that and recognize that about themselves. And so basically my number 4 is insert your list here. And I mean that. It's not just a cop-out. That's really what I think. I'm curious to read your lists below, but I got to go pick a bunch more stuff, including another Rescuers ornament. These have sold really quick. Once we put them on 30%, you know, we're making money on them, but I decided to cut bait because where I had them priced, they just weren't going very quick. And now they are flying out of here. So another one of the Rescuers ornaments are headed out the door at just a tick under $14, super light. I decided to look on that one, and it is a viewer who bought that. Those are about 50-50, but I looked back and I missed a viewer sale today. These are the only ones we've had. Oh, there's a few more coming. There's 5 total out of 20. I don't know how many sales. Any rate, hey Kevin, love watching you and your family. This is for the VCR. I anxiously wait each day for the work week for the Trash to Cash podcast. I'm so sorry. I'm a part-time reseller. Using my profits to pay off my medical bills has helped me so much, and I've learned the good from the bad from watching y'all. Keep it up, and I wish you the best. Thanks, Kyle. Firelands Thrift and Vintage on eBay. Well, thank you, Will. We appreciate you. Or Kyle, sorry. It says Will in there. Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the VCR. VCR is not typically something bought by a viewer, but thank you. It's happened a couple times. This one is to Nicole. Hi, I've been watching you for a few years. This is for the Disney Rescuers ornaments. As a fellow flipper, very motivating. I also have a flea market booth, which is why I try to run like a video game collectibles store. Very cool. I want to add social media if I ever beat my nerves. I've heard you talk about hours of dedication to it. Do you keep a schedule like 9 to 5? Basically, if I'm awake and not doing something with the kids, or something directly related to reselling, or something with my wife, I'm doing it. So that'll give you an idea. The social media is a huge time commitment to do all that I do. You could do just one thing in social media, but I mean, I'm pretty obsessive. If I'm going to do something, I want to maximize those efforts by multiplying what I'm doing across multiple platforms, if that makes any sense. Yes, it is. It's very consuming. However, it doesn't mean everybody has to do it that way. You can find one platform, do one thing the way you want to do it. Just whatever it is, I would say do it consistently. But thank you, by the way. I appreciate you very much. It's ThriftBot 2000. Hope you enjoy the ornament. Actually, I just took a break for a minute. Well, for like 3 hours. I took Turner to practice like an hour. Drive and then practice and all that stuff. And my wife was sweet enough. I just came back in here. She left me a couple of VCRs. But look she packed all that stuff for me while I was away. So thank you, baby. I really do appreciate that. But I wanted to show you something real quick. And I do still have a few more items to pick, and then the 4 or 5 of you that are waiting around just impatiently for me to give you my top 3 historical events. But I just had to show you this. Look at this. I've used a 2-inch tape gun for absolutely forever. And I tried the 3-inch tape gun one time, and I absolutely hated it. But I decided I'd give it another shot because I thought maybe it was the tape gun that was the problem, not the tape. So I got some from my go-to tape from American Bubble Boy, of course. No surprise there. Code Commonwealth, 5% off. And I'm in love with it. I absolutely love it. So check this out. I mean, look at the difference in these two, for goodness sake. Just crazy. So I'm an over taper. If you used to watch my shipping videos, you know that. I tape like crazy. I go tape to tape. I go both directions. I just, it's a compulsion, I guess. I overuse tape. Anyway, I'm only going to make one pass with that piece. I would make a pass with this one, and it's a seam like this where you create a box. I would make 2 more passes, and I would angle them. That's how crazy I am. And when you do the construction of a box, the breaking it down, I always like to do that on them as well. And sometimes I'll take 2 passes at that too. In this case, 1 pass. I actually think I'm going to do this. My wife probably would prefer this one. I'll have to check, see what she did on those boxes right there. But I'm going to do 1 pass and see if I can handle it mentally. So at any rate, shout out Joel. Although, Joel, I do have to say something. 2 of the rolls had an imperfection in them. You're not going to be able to see it there. But there's like a little bubble in the roll right here. And so every time I came around on the first 3 or 4 passes, it would split the tape in 2. Once I got through 3 or 4, it works perfectly. But I don't know. I think it's probably just on a couple of rolls, but thought I'd point that out. I guess I should point this out too. I'm going to package this one up, not on camera, and then we'll pull the final orders. But just for those of you who always ask about flat rate shipping, I actually, on small light VCRs, this is probably crazy to some of you, I will charge $9.99. And on big ones, I only charge $15.99. And I occasionally lose on these VCRs right here. But most of the time I win. Sometimes I barely win, but after fees, you break even. I charge $10 to ship that thing right there. And I am paying $9.53. Ground Advantage, $9.53 to ship that one after I measured it and weighed it and everything. And what else? What were the other costs? I think Priority would have only been $11.20. UPS Ground was $13.88. FedEx, and I know that's in the... Everybody talks about FedEx. I basically avoid FedEx at all costs at this point. I've been burned and I don't like it very much. But Smart Post is $7.10. But I'm not touching that. So how many of y'all use FedEx Smart Post out there? Regular FedEx on that item is... home delivery is $20.35. So UPS, did I say that? Yeah, UPS Ground $13.88. So Ground Advantage is the best for this one. I'm not sure what it'll be for this one. If this was going to California, I'd have lost money on that. Well, I wouldn't have lost money on it. I'd have lost money on the shipping portion of it. But I wouldn't have lost money because there's enough in it. But we'll see how this one goes. All right, just printed off this label. This is actually exactly the same, $9.53, despite the fact that it's a little bit larger of a box. Not much, just a little bit. And it basically weighs the same. It's going to Kentucky. So bigger VCR, slightly heavier, but still stayed under 9 ounces because of the way I package it. And it's only going to cost $9.53. Can't beat that. So another golf club head cover, G430. That's it right there, Ping. And that one sold for $14.20 plus shipping. Sold one of my 1800 keychains here, Scooby-Doo this time. And this is probably our worst seller, so I decided to put Scooby out there on discount, just 30% off to see what would happen. And guess what? We sold one. And of course I can't find it. And I think we have more of those than any other one. Anyway, so, oh my goodness. All right, I got it. $7.66 for that one. I think this has convinced me. This heater went out right here. And I have that great space, and I have a perfect dresser inside. It's like this tall. It's got drawers in it. It's white. And I think, because that heater gave out, I'm going to take that out of here. This little heater back here is doing the trick. And I think I'll take probably this and this off and maybe put them somewhere else. That's my favorite thing in here, that Blue Moon thing. And I'll put that dresser here. And I'm going to use those to put all those keychains in. And I sold this Russ Koala Bear. Right here, it's been sitting here for a long time. Is that a repeat buyer? I think it is. Shane, I'm going to say thank you to you just in case. This little Russ koala, there's not a ton of solds for it, but I just thought it was super cool. So I picked it up, $11.40 for that one, plus shipping. Here's one that I wouldn't typically buy, but it was a buddy of mine at flea market. He was clearly wanting to sell some stuff, so, you know, I like to help those folks out. It had a little issue, and I got it for $1. And it sold for $12 plus shipping. I was hoping a Philly fan would get it. I was thinking maybe Brian Klaus. I should have just sent it to you, Brian. But Frank's got it. Hello, CWP family. I saw this on your last Flipper episode. Had to get it since I'm a viewer on YouTube. I guess that makes me not a real eBay buyer. But the money is real. Thank you, Alexandria Pickers. We appreciate it very much. And I hope you enjoy that one. I just thought it was kind of unique with the black. Definitely vintage. I appreciate it. The next one is something I wouldn't normally pick up, but I saw a few things in this bucket full of tools, and I'm like, how much for the whole bucket? And I found a few extra things to sell. Kind of learning from my buddy Leroy over there on Reseller Information Network. There are some great eBay sellers over there. Not just eBay, I guess. One-stop shop over on District as well. And when I got these, I thought of Leroy out there. Blood, Sweat, and Sell. They're hand taps. I'm like, this is something Leroy would sell. And it sold, and surprisingly, this is one of the strangest viewer sales I think I've ever got in my life. I would never think in a million years this would go to viewer, but it did. Those little hand taps sold for $10.95 plus shipping. And like I said, it went to Wayne. Enjoy your YouTube videos. They're very informative. Wishing you and your family all the best. Thank you. We appreciate it very much. So there goes my whole narrative lately about not so many viewer sales, because the last two definitely were. But we do appreciate it, and thank you for dropping by. Oh, wait. I have to give those 4 people out there what they're waiting for. So bear with me here. History people, if you hate history and you hated your old history teacher, well, I hated some of my history teachers, but I loved history. So top 3 events in human history. I got to give a little asterisk here to one of them. One of them I actually don't subscribe to per se, but it was one that I needed to have in the discussion because it's so core to the typical view of history, and AP World History kind of moves off of that. So I had to have this one in there. But 2 of the I'll just say all 3 of them. The one that needed to be in their list, we could readjust everything after we had the discussion and kind of compile them per class, and then I'd take all of the classes the next day and we'd compare all the classes and see what their collective opinions were, and we'd make one master list and work off of it all year. It was really a good little exercise in getting people to think differently about something that they used to think one way about. Not necessarily in a negative way, but bringing their own worldview to the table while looking at it in a much bigger worldview, thinking about how other people view history. Anyway, the Neolithic Revolution had to be in the top 3, which, if you don't know much about history, that's basically, to sum it up, it's the beginning of farming agrarian societies versus hunter-gatherer societies. And the argument, of course, is without farming, there wouldn't be massive population growth, and very few of us would be here. And when that occurs, you know, over time is kind of debatable, but most historical viewpoints, if you're talking at the academic level, start with that one as one of the major, if not the major shift in human history. I don't necessarily subscribe to it, however, and I would tell the kids what I thought, but then I would also say, hey, I'm pretty atypical in this belief. I believe that essentially since humans have existed, that both hunter-gatherer societies and agrarian societies have always existed side by side. Sometimes more than others, but you get the point. Anyway, the other 2 are the Columbian Exchange, when the Eastern Hemisphere, not for the first time, but for the first time that it actually sticks since the 11th century. In the 15th century, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That Columbian Exchange, the biological exchange, increased massively the food supply around the world. It mixed cultures that never mixed before and forever changed the history of the world. There's no doubt about that, and in historical circles, there's no doubt about that either. And then the last one is the Industrial Revolution, which completely changed the way the world had always worked up until that point, where basically power was provided by the wind, by the water, or by animals. And after that, we had the steam engine, and everything changed forever. And so we talk about it in terms of the classroom that we were sitting in, and I would say, hey, basically, without the Neolithic Revolution or farming, none of us would be here because the world population would have never grown to the point where we'd be here at all. You can make the same argument for the Columbian Exchange because of the foods that were in one hemisphere and not the other, the animals that were in one hemisphere and not the other. The Western Hemisphere, for instance, had very few, if any, you want to argue guinea pigs and llamas, I suppose, domesticatable animals. They just didn't have any until the Columbian Exchange. And corn was in one hemisphere and not the other, and wheat was in, you know, all kinds of arguments like that. And on top of that, you could certainly argue that everybody sitting in that classroom that day, their genetic roots came from the Eastern Hemisphere, because we didn't have any 100% full-blood Native Americans sitting in the classroom. So certainly without that, none of us would be in that classroom. And thirdly, without the Industrial Revolution, the classroom itself wouldn't be there, and nothing inside the classroom, because all of those things were a result of the Industrial Revolution. And almost nobody had any of that stuff on their list. Some of them had Columbus on there. But at any rate, sorry I had to bore you. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I sure enjoyed talking to you, and I can't wait to see you next.